is a clear glimpse of hope. We are hoping that is implemented very soon, because I believe we have had a cabinet of so many people who have exhibited so much hunger to the public funds. Because some people, we know them, and they have been in government less than 10 years, and you can see the kind of life they are living right now clearly shows you they have been digging into our coffers for private use. So it is time for the cabinet to be reshuffled. It's time to kick out some of the people who have let the president down. And I think the time is now.
So the paper on page 7 says that it's the president's last supper with the CSs before the axe falls. But there's been a lot of conversation, even on social media, and I wish we had the picture, but this connotation of what the cabinet reshuffle would look like. And so we had a dark red circle and, you know, a bright red circle. Many do not expect a very big difference, you know, just a slight difference, so to speak. And so some say if there's a reshuffle and not so much an axe, then there may still be a problem. What are your expectations? Because even during that media address on Sunday, President William Ruto was very keen to say that he will do some soul searching, but has previously said that everything must be in accordance with the law, that, you know, a cabinet secretary can only be axed if there's evidence to show that he has failed in his duties, so to speak.
I think the main thing is if you look at why you find Kenyans having these kind of expectations, or don't have so much expectations, so to say, with the President Act, is the loss of trust. And I think this is a chance for the President to redeem himself and to now make people trust him, especially the young people who have lost a lot of trust with him, his conduct, on how he has been managing his affairs. I think we are used to kutenga, kupanga for so long. And that's why you find that even the time the question was posed to him on whether his cabinet has failed him, I think one of the journalists asked him that question during the roundtable. He confirmed that it is a discussion. For him, he just acknowledged the discussion we are going to have. Right. So he did not clearly accept that he is going to kick people out. And we have noticed that previously in the many other regimes that we have been a bit knowledgeable to understand what is happening. Most of the time you find the president just move people around, move from one department to another, one ministry to a diplomat. Kenyans want to see those corrupt leaders drop off, those people who have been mismanaging public funds drop off, and we bring on board professionals who understand what needs to be done, people who are leaders who understand what needs to be done for the purpose of making this country grow and listening to the members of the public. Right,
and so take a look at what's making headlines on the front page of the People Daily there. It says Ruto hints at cabinet shuffle after protests. And as we take a look at that headline, an interesting story on page 7 of the Standard newspaper. Let me just read a part of the article there, as it says that the Standard has established that about 7 ministries will be scrapped following the reorganization, which may also see several departments merged in an array of state corporations that may just be disbanded. Now, multiple sources independently indicated that prior to the meeting yesterday, the president held a 40-minute meeting with his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, before joining the cabinet secretaries, some whose jobs are on the line. And there's been information even from ministry officials that everything has literally ground to a halt, even especially programs run by PSS and CSS as they wait to know their fate. And so in the new anticipated lineup, there will be 15 ministries, according to this article in the Standard, as opposed to the current 22, which will be reorganized. And so we'll be looking at some of those ministries, but it's a reorganization that will lead to the Ministry for Water, Forest and Environment, Ministry for Tourism, Culture, Youth and Sports, Ministry for Infrastructure, Lands, Housing, Public Works, Roads, Ministry for Economic Planning, SME Cooperatives, Delivery Unit, ICT. And so we're seeing a lot of merging, possibly, as the ministries are cut down to 15. And so this means about 7 cabinet secretaries will be left without portfolio, or will be axed, so to speak. And we'd like to get your thoughts on this as we take a look at us making headlines on the daily. Speak to us on X at K24 TV. The hashtag is New Dawn. What are your expectations of this expected cabinet shakeup by President William Ruto, which comes on a day that the president has also promised to conduct dialogue with the Gen Z on that X space? It is something that we are looking forward to. But Steve, looking at this article and the fact that we're expecting ministries to be cut down to 15 as opposed to the current 22, what does that say to you?
I think I don't know whether the president is really addressing the concerns of Kenyans or he is addressing his personal thoughts about the issue, because the main thing is not even cutting down the ministry, because our constitution allows up to 22 ministries. The main concerns with the Kenyans, mostly the young people who have been on the streets and complaining against the government, is how these ministries have been operating, how they have been running their affairs, and whether they are making any sense. Because there's some other offices apart from the ministries which have been there, and we have been seeing those spouses' offices which have been misusing a lot of funds. You find the office of the First Lady has almost more than 200 employees who have been run. So those are the kind of immediate actions that people want to see done away with. And also we find some of the ministers, mostly not even just cutting down the ministry. Some of the ministers that we know have not been doing anything since they were put in those offices, apart from misusing public funds, to be put aside and put off from the government affairs until we have people who are capable of running government affairs.
Right. Let's bring in Vivian Tash. He's a communications and public affairs expert joining us in New Dawn. Vivian, good morning.
Good morning.
How has the week been? It's been a long week.
It's been a long week, but we're looking forward to seeing changes, tangible changes happening
right.
in Kenya.
Let's talk about this conversation on the impending cabinet reshuffle. And sources now indicate that we could be having a cut down of ministries to 15, which means that 7 cabinet secretaries will essentially be losing their jobs. And the conversation now has turned to that cabinet shuffle. Many saying, in fact, dissolve the entire cabinet and start afresh. But we are already seeing some sort of changes being indicated. What are your thoughts? How do you welcome these changes?
I mean, I see it as a positive step. Although, you know, the very key issues, the low-hanging fruit would have been to first of all do away with unconstitutional officers. So, I mean, this feels like a hoodwink, like, you know, you're being hoodwinked to feel that something is being done. And yet the very key issues we're talking about, the unconstitutional officers that have budgetary allocation, he still hasn't really said much about them. But my own view is I'd say maybe 70–80% of the cabinet are incompetent.
So maybe just to reinforce that, because sources indicate that about 43 parastatal chiefs will be shown the door after their parastatals or their entities are scrapped. And this was part of those, the demands to do away with not just unconstitutional officers, but also, you know, state, you know, loss-making entities at the end of the day. And so details of these parastatals are likely to be made clear when the president makes his announcement, and many expecting that that will be any time over the weekend. Do you take that as the president listening to the demands of the Gen Z?
And I take it as the president listening, yes. And I wish these are things he had done immediately he took, you know, office, you know, cut down on some of these things. But I think at that time they were they were drunk with power, and they were very happy about, you know, getting into office. So maybe that was not a priority at that point. But yes, it should not have come to this, you know, the pressure that is mounting, forcing him to do some of these things. But we expect a lot more. I still haven't heard him say anything about the constitution of IEBC. I haven't heard him say anything about the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary and a lot of those unconstitutional officers. But also the state parastatals, a lot of them have roles that are, cut across. They are duplicated roles. Their roles are not very well defined, and yet they have, budgetary allocations, they have staff, they have employees, and they don't really have clear KPIs about, what they're doing and the value they bring to the Kenyan economy. So I think it's a good time to relook and think which parastatals, are being funded by Treasury, are receiving funding from Treasury, and what are they doing? How are they benefiting the Kenyan economy? How are they benefiting Kenyan taxpayers? Because if you're not, then, we need to do away with some of these things. The other thing I'd really like to see is the end to cronism. I don't know if it was you I was with here in studio, a time when there was this joke going around on X that, to get a job in government, you just need to say Yamune, speak in Kalenjin, because at that time, very many high-level positions were going to people of the Kalenjin community and Mount Kenya community. And I remember at that time, Gachagua had even made a comment saying government has shareholders, to make it look like it was only, these positions were only for specific people. So this narrative has to change. This is a good time to review these things. If he's really serious about getting back into the good graces of Kenyans, not just Gen Z, but Kenyans generally, then this is a good time to, sweep the house. Sweep the house. If you have incompetent people who do not deserve some of those positions, they need to leave, because this is public resources and we need the best of the best.
All right. And it's a lot of implications that will follow moving forward, because the call isn't just for the dissolution of the cabinet, but also the dissolution of parliament at some point, a conversation that we'll be having at the top of the hour. But take a look at the top page of the People Daily, the corner there. It says Haji and IG Kome on the chopping board. It's a story that continues on page 3 of the People Daily, as President William Ruto now mouths organizing his government. And so the spotlight has now once again turned to the National Intelligence Service under the director, Nurdin Haji, over its alleged failure to detect the growing discontent in the government. That's on page 3 of the People Daily, if you could just have that up. And so questions have emerged over whether NIS, whose primary role is to collect intelligence reports as well as advise the government, was able to detect the dissent against the contentious finance bill that led to the protests. Now, those that are agitating, piling pressure on the NIS, say that the entity should have been aware of the growing discontent over the finance bill and the general feeling against President William Ruto's government. Steve, what are your thoughts on this? Because many are looking at this as a political fight, with the question, if we had NIS miss it, if we had a Kenya Kwanza majority, in Parliament, miss the feeling on the ground, then how much more out of touch can an administration be?
And that's why we started with asking whether the president is aware of what is happening. And why am I saying this? We had the deputy president take press and issued a statement that the NIS boss was not providing the proper brief to the president. When a crocodile tells you the hippo is sick, you need to believe it. They live in the water, so you can't argue much by contesting those statements. But we saw the kind of preparation, how the police were responding to the protesters, could easily tell you that they were not prepared. They were not expecting the numbers. Or they knew about this information, but they provided the wrong brief. So those are the only possible options that they have. Either they knew about it, they provided the wrong brief to the president, or they didn't know about it because they were not competently able to collect the data. And if, unfortunately, they were not able to know how, they did not know how to collect, they did not get the proper data, then that is a worry for the country, because how many other things are slipping off their fingers, which they're not able to pick up and know that these are contentious issues. Because by the time the parliament was making that decision, the first reading was being done, there were protests across the country. The second reading, there were very major protests. The third reading, there were massive protests across the country. Anybody, even those who are not relying on NIS brief, could easily pick up the vibe. So what we would like to understand, and what runs in the back of most of our mind, is, do we have a competent boss at the NIS? or is the NIS both providing the right brief to the president?
Right. What do you read into this, Vivian?
For me,
why do you think the NIS? Do you think the NIS missed it?
I
First
don't
of
think
all, that this information was just not relayed in the right way to the presidency.
Honestly, I don't think the NIS missed it. I think, from where I sit, I believe they provided the correct information. But you see, we've had government run by people with very big egos. You know, there's been a lot of pride in the leadership. You could see it from, you know, just the opulence, the extravagance. Remember last year when the issue of Finance Bill 2023 was being discussed, they were even saying we're not going to change a comma. There was this, you know, arrogance of, yes, this is what people are saying, but there's nothing they will do. Remember, at the same time these conversations were going on, the president had hosted, I think, some students or something from the US. And in that event, he was even saying, that's the event where he said by the time he leaves office, he wants to have raised taxes to 22%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And he said in that address, he even said, people will complain, but they will watazoea. So from where I sit, I honestly believe the correct brief was provided, but the pride, ego, and bravado of, you know, the people in government, they felt mtadu, you know, there's nothing the people can do. We have the instruments of power. We have state security machinery, so people can't do anything. And going by, and I think this year, maybe because also Raila is focused on, you know, running for AU, they thought, you know, there will be no resistance to this thing. Even if people are unhappy, we will pass this thing and life will go on. And that is why, even though 2 days of protest had already happened, they went ahead.
Right.
They went ahead and, you know, quickly passed the bill. So I do not think that they did not know. It's just an issue of they did not listen. They chose not to listen. They chose not to act because they did not think the pressure from the public would amount to anything until people started to feel personal loss, until it got to an extent that, you know, Parliament was, you know, people entered Parliament.
Right. And many said that was a show of no confidence, lack of confidence.
Lack
in
of
the
confidence.
It's a clear vote of no confidence.
It
A
is.
vote of no confidence.
Once someone walks into that, those kind of spaces where we have given them that kind of a respect since independence, a clear reminder that we sent you there, and we have told you not to vote, but you have now forced us to come. That one, for any member of parliament, should know is a vote of no confidence.
Okay, so we'll be discussing that at the top of the hour, and whether that is enough just to trigger the conversation and dissolution of parliament altogether, as a section of members of parliament have actually been calling for. But an interesting article on page 2 of the People Daily says EACC boss faults senators of conflict of interest bill, and I'll read a bit of it. And so EACC is hitting back at the Senate for watering down the conflict of interest bill of 2023, which is now currently before the National Assembly. Now, the Senate voted to pass the bill with major amendments after deleting key progressive provisions. And the EACC now says this has negated the effect of the proposed bill, or the essence of the proposed law. Now, Twale Mbarak says that the conflict of interest is the main basis for corruption in Kenya. The reason why lots of money has gone missing in the hands of public officials. And so the bill barred public officers from trading with public entities in which they work. The Senate has removed this prohibition. Vivian, what are your thoughts on this?
I think, I don't think they removed those prohibitions before, you know, the recent events. And I believe, given the recent events, they will have to rethink this. If the majority leader actually withdrew the land laws amendment, you know, bill
Towards the final stage.
Yeah, it was, and it was withdrawn. So right now, what's happening, and what I'm very, very happy about, is people are more engaged. People are more informed about what's happening. People are scrutinizing what is going through Parliament. What bills are they debating? What are they considering? What are parliamentarians saying? How does it affect us? And that's because it's already, you know, in the public domain. I believe they should do something about it. Ama wasalimiwe.
What are your thoughts? Because this essentially then brings a big lacuna when we are looking to ramp up the fight against corruption. And Barak points out that senators removed the provision allowing unrestricted access to wealth declaration by law enforcement agencies to detect unexplained wealth in favor of the status quo.
That can clearly shows you the kind of people we have in Senate and Parliament in general. And the fact that someone feels the need, for the longest time, the aspect of public, let's start even public participation, has been ignored. And I think the Supreme Court during the BBI decision clearly reminded Kenyans and in general that public participation is not a cosmetic affair. So once people have aired their concerns about something and they have expressed a need for something to be considered, it is the duty of our parliamentarians to listen to the views. Look at the bill that is before the Senate. It's a bill that addresses issues of accountability. It's a bill that touches on whether transparency. So once you see a senator taking on the floor to try and move to have those particular clauses scrapped off from the bill, it clearly shows you that they have no intention of being transparent and accountable to the members of the public.
I'd like us to take a break, but we have to discuss this on page 3 of the paper. Vivian, very, very briefly, what are your thoughts on that speech by the president's daughter, Charlene Ruto, asking the youth to give her father a chance?
Atrocious, in one word. I mean, you, as who? You address people in your family meeting, not, like you have no platform. Okay. You have no place.
We must take a break. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Why didn't she tell the father to listen to the youth?
Yes.
Maybe she should have started that way. Now we'll have listened to her.
Okay, let's take a break. Let's take a break. So that's what's making headlines on the dailies. We'd like to hear your thoughts as well on that conversation and many more. The hashtag is New Dawn. When we come back, take a look at the top stories that have shaped the news this week, as well as preempting what will be shaping the public discourse in the coming week. Do stay with us.
Ukiuliza kiatu ndo nitakwambia ni mambo mangapi mimi nimepitia, siwezi rudi nyuma sitakalili njia. Shakutana na mambo mengi ya dunia, ndo maana pale nilipo nikikwamulia, ushindi hata ukivaa nguo za kushindia. Amtaki kutuona mbele, kwa wenzetu mnatakaje? Tulikotoka tulimwaga maji ya marage, mnatumbia mabaya kwani sisi tuliwafanyaje? Tumekoswa na vibaka mnaomba tonga litukada, na kuna vitu mnavifanya bana amfanyi poa, kwa mawazo yenu mnazani mnanikomoa, kila kianzisha penzi mnapanga kulibomboa, au mnataka Yesu arudi anikute bado sijaoa.